Now that we've got some valid HTML on the screen, we need to start adding some actual interactions to each of these elements. So for example, we need to make sure that whenever a user changes the length right here, we consider that length when we actually generate a password. Same thing for selecting or deselecting these checkboxes. And of course, once a user clicks on the generate button, we need to actually generate a password and show it inside of that input. So it's very clear at this point that we need to somehow deal with user interaction. And that's what we're going to figure out inside this video. How do we write some code to watch for a user changing that value, or checking that checkbox, or clicking that button? To give ourselves a very easy, straightforward target, we're going to first try to figure out how we can make sure that we just console log some kind of message anytime a user clicks on that button right there. That's the first thing we're going to figure out. Now, as soon as we start talking about handling user input, you might think back to this diagram that we looked back over here. So remember, in this diagram, we spoke about a very important type of file inside of Angular projects, a component class file. And we had said that component class files contain code to run whenever important events occur, like a user clicking a button. So as you'd guess, we're going to find the component class file for our application right now. That's going to be our app component.ts file. So we're going to find that file, and inside that class, we're going to add in some code to run whenever a user clicks on that button. All right, so I'll go back over to my editor. Inside of my source app directory, I'm going to find the app component ts file. So here is my component class. Now, as we mentioned a couple times, there is some crazy syntax inside of here that we're going to go over in due time. But for right now, let's just focus on all this button handling stuff. Inside the class app component, there's already one property being initialized inside of here. So we're setting title equal to a string of PW. This is some pre-generated code right here. We're not actually using this property anymore, so we're going to delete it out of the class. We're then going to replace it with a function that is going to be called anytime a user clicks on that button. So inside of my app component class, I will write out on button click. And then inside of that function, we'll add a simple console log. So I'll say console log button was clicked, like so. Okay, so we've now added some functionality to our class. We've added specifically a method that is going to be called anytime a user clicks on that button. Just adding the function itself doesn't actually do anything for us. We have to specifically tell Angular that anytime someone clicks on that button, we want to call this function right here. To set up that mapping, we need to add in some code to our template file. So we're going to open up our template file, we're going to find that button, and we're going to add in a little piece of code to tell Angular to call this function anytime a user clicks on the button. So I will change back over to my app component HTML file. Inside of here, I'm going to scroll down until I find that button element. So here's the button right here. So the very special syntax we're going to add into this button is not going to look like typical HTML at all. It turns out that what we write inside this file is not strictly HTML. It is technically a syntax called the Angular template syntax. So we can write out what looks like normal HTML, but there are also several other pieces of syntax we can use that is definitely not HTML at all. So this is going to be that first little piece of strange syntax that we start to see. Inside of the button element itself, I'm going to give myself a little bit of space here, and then I'll put in a set of parentheses. We put in a set of parentheses anytime that you want to tell Angular to watch for some kind of event to occur on this element. Inside those parentheses, we're going to add in the name of the event that we want to watch for. So in this case, I'm going to put in click. After that, I'll then put in an equal sign, some double quotes, and inside there, we're going to try to call that function that we just wrote out over here called onButtonClick. So I will type inside there onButtonClick, and I will call it like a function. Okay, we're going to pull this line apart very quickly, but first let's save this file, go back over to our browser, and test this out. So I'll flip back over, go back to my application. I'm going to open up my Chrome console by right-clicking anywhere on the screen and clicking Inspect. I'll then go to the Console tab. And then finally, I'm going to click on the Generate button. And as soon as I do so, I'll see that console log appear. I can click it as many times as I want, and I keep getting additional console logs. Okay, so what's going on with that syntax? Well, quick little diagram here. So this is what we refer to as the event binding syntax. We're going to write this out inside of a template anytime that we want to watch for some event that occurs to an element. So as I mentioned, we're going to write in a set of parentheses. Inside the parentheses, we're going to put the name of the event that we want to watch for. We can put in any standard HTML event name inside there that we want. So for example, we can have a mouse enter event or a mouse leave. We can have a drag event. We can have for inputs a change or an input event, and so on. All those standard HTML events that you are used to, those names can go directly inside of here. Now here's the really confusing part about the event binding syntax. Whatever goes inside of those double quotes right there is going to be evaluated as code whenever that event occurs. So whenever a user clicks on the button, this right here, on button click, that gets evaluated as though it were code. So that, even though it really looks like a string to you and I, not a string. It is code that we are writing inside there. Now, what is really interesting here is that calling on button click is going to automatically find the on button click function that we defined inside of the component. So this reference to on button click right here calls that method right there. What is kind of surprising about this is that we did not have to write anything on here like, say, component.onButtonClick. We didn't have to write that. We did not have to write this.onButtonClick. We didn't have to write appComponent.onButtonClick or anything. All we have to do is put in the name of the function on our class that we want to call whenever a user clicks a button. That's it. So this syntax right here with the double quotes where we have some code, that is going to be kind of confusing when you're first getting used to Angular. But we're going to use this syntax so often that you're going to get used to it very quickly. Okay, so now that we've set up our first click event handler and we've had a very long discussion about it, quick pause right here. We're going to continue to add in some more functionality in just a moment.